And you heard a little bit in the open there of George Kliavkoff at Media Days today in a press conference that I would say, and look, we talked about this, Craig, and my feeling was the whole time, like, God bless him if he doesn't have anything to say about this media deal. And he didn't, and he tried to, kept saying we wanted to put the focus on football today, but he said a couple of things that contradicted itself and sidestep a question, and you'll get to hear all the relevant audio, about 7 minutes worth of it here in a couple of minutes. But the focus being at Pac-12 Media Days on their media rights deal, which George Kliavkoff said they intentionally didn't announce it today because they wanted to highlight the football, but then when asked about it and said, so that means there is a deal, he said, well, I think you're reading too much into that. So you'll get to hear all that. Craig, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch it yet. I know that that you'll get to hear the audio here in a second, but it was not a banner day for George Kliavkoff.
Yeah, I mean, I got to hear it and all that. I mean, it's there was a lot to unpack from it, and you can take certain things however you choose to take them. I think if you're a Pac-12 fan, you can still sit there and say, oh, well, we're assured that there's something coming down the tracks and everything's going to be fine in the long run. And if you're a Big 12 fan who's like looking for something negative, then I think you certainly got more than a couple of moments where that could be a takeaway as well. So in the long run, all the things that were said, they don't have a deal yet. There were some very peculiar kind of moments where he was talking really out of both sides of his mouth. Like the whole, it's stable, and like when you hear the deal's taking so long because, or at least the talk was amongst like defenders of the Pack or whatever, of like, well, it's taking long because it's so complicated and it's so unique and it's so forward thinking. And then here he is and he's talking about, well, the last 3 or 4 weeks are when I really felt great about nothing happening, like as far as expansion. It's like, wait. The last 3 or 4 weeks is when you finally started to feel was when you started to feel better about the direction. So that means in the last month when people have been talking about that direction and whether or not it was all that rock solid, and people are going, you idiots, it's just because the deal's so complicated. He himself was sitting there in the last month going, well, this is not exactly how we drew it up, but now he's good. But now he's good here in these last 3 or 4 weeks. So that means that it wasn't necessarily all gravy before that. So people talking about it not being that way weren't just making S up or just pulling, what out of their backsides. Yeah, I found that very interesting because it kind of contradicted the whole, like, well, no, all those outside talk and all that, we just weren't going to pay attention to that. He touched on a lot of different things kind of throughout that have been storylines, whether it's the talk from the Big 12, whether it's the rumors of their demise, whether it's the expansion piece going or coming, and, all points in between. But that particularly raised my eyebrows because, like, wait a minute, in the last month you felt better about things? So yeah, there has been obviously some behind the scenes, some wringing of hands and some wondering about where this is all going and some hurdles. And we've been able to gather that just because it's taken as long as it has. But to hear him say that, it goes to show you that, yeah, all the stuff about the difficulty is not just out of thin air. Like, and the stuff about it taking as long as it has, sure, you can say it still lines up with the deal, but would they have rather had a deal by now? Absolutely, yes, they would.
Well, okay, the other thing about that is he's contradicted months of his own presidents saying things.
Exactly.
It's still on track to do what we had planned when we announced it before, as the conference expansion happened last year. Well, then why did so many of your presidents keep saying, well, any day now, or, we expect it soon, we're going to do this, as opposed to just say the true thing. We're working on it. We have no timetable when it's going to get done. There's a drop dead date of when the contract actually ends. And as long as we get it done before then, we're happy with that. Yeah. Then that's what you say. Yeah. And if it's not done, then you've told everyone from the beginning that you didn't have a firm timetable on it. But so that when people ask, because then you're like, hey, how are media negotiations going? We're happy with where we're headed. We still have a lot of things to work out, but we'll get it done. And that's what you say. You just keep on, as opposed to, how are media negotiations? Well, I mean, we expect to see something, and we think we should have something done by Christmas. Christmas rolls around. Oh, well, it's Christmas. I mean, who works on Christmas? Then well, we've got to at least have it by the tournament. If we don't have it done by the tournament or shortly after in April, then I would say that would be cause for concern. These are not things that I'm saying. These are things that the presidents are saying, over and over again. Oh, well, we think we should have something about Media Days. Media Days comes around. Well, we're not going to announce it on Media Days because we don't want to have any focus taken away from the football, which is, look, there would be the only thing. Nobody's going to ask George Kliavkoff about football. What does he know? I mean, that's not his job, is to go up there and be like, well, I really think that Oregon has a better defense than people are giving them credit for, and I like what they're mixing up with the linebackers. That's not what people come to him for at all. They're going to come to him for how is the business of the conference going. So, yes, that's the question you have to answer. Now, are they going to go to Dan Lanning and ask him some questions about the media deal? Sure, but it's not going to be the lion's share of what he'd have to answer. So you can still do both. So it's all very weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's an update, I guess, of some sort, and really nothing's changed at all since before he talked to when after he talked. I think everything is pretty much the same exact as it was. I mean, there's a deal coming. Everybody loves it. We just can't talk about it because it doesn't actually exist just yet. But trust us, it's coming. We're on track, on time. It's everybody else that's talking that's full of it, and they're the ones that don't, understand, and everything's perfect behind the scenes is basically the gist that I got, although he clearly indicated that even in the last month was when things started to settle down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to kind of unpack, and I do think it's in the eye of the beholder, a lot of it. I didn't come out of that going they're totally screwed, and I do think there is something. There are certain individuals that I do feel try to throw fuel on stuff that's not even a fire, and then they come running up with a lighter and they light it on fire. And they're like, see, it's, and I do feel there are some Big 12-ish folks that tell them that they have a problem when they're like, no, we don't have a problem. Yeah, you do. You do have a problem. And it's no, we don't. I do think there is some of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think he addressed that, and I do agree with some of that. But I do also think there are people that point out that, yeah, there's flaws in how long this is taking, and flaws in how it's all adding up and how some of the quotes have added up. And there is something to that side as well. So, I think it just depends on how you want to view it. If you're a Pac person who wants to believe that they're going to stay together, there's reason to believe that coming out of today. It doesn't have a lot of concrete details attached to it. Matter of fact, it's got no details attached to it, no network, no money figure, no exact timeline on when a deal's even going to come together because it's still not done yet. No clarity on expansion. Just the same thing they've been saying. So if you want to take all that, which is basically nothing's changed from what's been talked about the last year, as a positive, then you're right to do that. If you want to take that as see, the longer this goes, the more screwed they are. They have nothing. They got nothing. They're not going to have anything. Then I think you could walk away and probably feel that way. I don't know if that'll be the correct, way in the end, because they will get a deal. They will. It's just we're all at the same. We've just all circled back to the same exact point of what is that deal? Who's it with, and for how much money, and how long? And that is those are the questions of all the things that have been talked about are the ones that remain unanswered all the way up until this point, and those are the only ones that really matter in the end. But yeah, it was interesting to hear him talk for the first time in a really long time. I also didn't understand in terms of kind of talking out of both sides, and maybe this is just me not knowing the TV industry. I don't pretend to be an expert there, so if I'm just missing the obvious, then help me out. But the whole part about, and look, and part of it too is Kliavkoff saying what he's saying, and just because Canzano said something or Schultz said something, that's not him saying that necessarily. So it's just funny though to hear for the last year of, well, it's a complicated time in the industry, and there's all this fluctuation ongoing, and it's a disruptive time to be negotiating a TV deal. And then here's Kliavkoff, is the longer this has gone on, the more suitors we have. And I'm doesn't that kind of conflict with one another?
My question is, are you saying the longer this has gone on, the better chance you have for more suitors? Because
right, I guess you could read into that how you want to as well.
Because a few months ago, you probably had less, given how volatile things have been. And then that's really saying if we wait longer, we have a better chance for more suitors. Okay. That's what I think it means. And I think that's what it should mean, because I don't think that people have just randomly popped up that weren't in this before, but the best chance they have to create some competition or have more of a diverse, platforms to put it on is probably now to wait some of the storm out, which also is what you could have said. It's like, well, part of us, we have to wait some of this storm out. You guys see what's going on in media. It's a wild time. But that's not really what he said. And then, Garrett, let's put up some of these tweets. And then we'll get to old George here. James Crepia. Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff says league is not announcing media deal on purpose today to focus on football. Pressed whether deal is done and codified, and this was James's question, you'll hear this, is just waiting to announce. Kliavkoff sidestepped. He said, well, I wouldn't read that much into it. So, because the way he said it was, we purposely didn't announce the deal today.
Yeah, he got caught up in
well,
that.
It's like, well, what you should have said is, deal or no deal, we were not going to announce it today.
Right.
Like, it was just not coming today because we didn't feel this was the appropriate time, which I would say, when you have all the media in one room, is a great time to announce things.
That's pretty much like media days. You're talking earlier, like, point me to SEC media days, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of talk about X's and O's, but media days are when people talk about the stuff like this, like this expansion and realignment and TV deals and, like the juicier headlines. That's a lot of what the talk. There are people at media days that will go pull aside the defensive end and talk to him about the 4-3 that they're running this year, and there is some of that as well. But all bases are covered. But yeah, a lot of times media days are about the big, thick, juicy headlines, and this is clearly theirs. It's not even close. And I understand that. The other juiciest headline for the Pac-12 is, in fact, their returning quarterbacks on paper and the potential playoff teams they do have. So he's absolutely right in wanting to shine a spotlight on that. But to pretend like it was ever going to be all about football when the TV deal was still up in the air is just stupid. Don't play us for fools, man. Come on now.
If they had announced it 3 weeks ago, you know what they would have led off the press conference?
Yeah.
It would have been like media partners. They would have had a great video that was like pow, 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 all over the place. So
big Apple logo.
Yeah, we're.
And guess what? That also would have led to no more questions about that or questions to just follow up on the details. And then guess what? A focus on the league itself. So
we are cutting new paths, all these things.
That didn't make sense when he said that about not wanting to take the focus away. And then obviously they did a great job out there. James Crepia, who's been on the show, of following back around to be like, so you're saying you got a deal and you just don't want to announce it? It was basically the gist of it, right? It was, so you're saying you don't want to announce it because you don't want to take attention away. No, I'm not saying that.
Because if you said we're not going to announce the deal today, well, you kind of just did if you had one, in a roundabout way. $5 super chat from B. Thank you very much. Pac-12 commissioner is not being honest with us. Something just doesn't make sense. I think he's caught up there with very little to say. And he has to talk for 15 minutes. He's obligated to do so at Big 12 Media or Pac-12 Media Days. So he got up there and he got caught in trying to spin his wheels. I will let you judge for yourself. So if you have not seen or